Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of Debate Cameroon Perspective. As usual, I am your co-moderator, Terence Agbo, and I will be co-moderating today's edition of Debate Cameroon Perspective Straight Talk with Mme Elizabeth Akaya. Our guest today is none other than the well-known Mme Edith Kah Walla, a well-known figure in the Cameroon political sphere. For over the past 2 to 3 years, Cameroon, specifically the southwest and northwest regions, have been plagued by extrajudicial killing and confrontations between the government military forces and the separatist fighters. This conflict has resulted in a significant loss of human lives. More than 200 people have been reported dead, several unaccounted for. Thousands are in detention as we speak. A humanitarian crisis with over 530,000 people have been internally displaced. 1.3 million people are in need of a humanitarian assistance. A near complete closure of schools in the southwest and northwest regions of Cameroon as we speak. Furthermore, this has resulted in a significant and near complete economic stagnation in these two regions. The conflict have now snowballed to the rest of the country, specifically the western regions and the littoral region, as well as our neighboring countries, Nigeria, and more recently, Equatorial Guinea. On September 10, the head of state of the Republic of Cameroon finally called for a national dialogue to resolve the conflict. This call for dialogue, albeit welcoming, generated a ton of responses. One such reactions coming from our guest, most likely drawing from her experiences in Cameroon politics for the past 2 decades. We would love her to come back in the future, hopefully, to discuss about her movement, Stand Up for Cameroon. But today, our attention will be on the conflict in Cameroon and the national dialogue called by the head of state. We intend to focus, amongst other things, on her take, her expectations and recommendations for the upcoming dialogue, but also her involvement in Cameroon political struggle. We are aware of the controversial and sensitive nature of this subject, with each and every one of us having their own views. As such, we demand that our audience in particular respect our guests and this platform in particular. We strongly discourage any form of disrespect or insults on the comment section. After all, we can always disagree without being disagreeable. Now, I will let my co-moderator, Elizabeth Akaya, to introduce our guest. Over to you, Eli.
Thank you, Terence. I think we lost Mme Kah Walla.
No, she's here. She's here.
Okay, then I think it's me. Okay, thank you very much. We're glad to have her on our platform tonight. As you already mentioned, Mme Kah Walla is a well-known Cameroonian politician. She's an opposition leader of the Cameroon People's Party. She's an entrepreneur, a social activist. She's the CEO of a company called Strategies. It's a leadership and management consulting firm, and as well as the current president of the Cameroon People's Party. Just to give you a little bit of a political background about Mme Kah Walla, in 1992, though she wasn't a member of the SDF at the time, she played a very crucial role in strategizing the SDF's participation in the 1992 presidential elections. And comes to find out, she was one of the co-writers of the speech that John Fundi used during his last campaign. After that, she continued to work with the SDF as a trainer and as an advisor. She wasn't a member, but officially joined the party in 2007, and then she was elected into the as a councillor at the Douala City Council. In 2010, she resigned from the SDF. We don't know. I mean, there are speculations as to why, but she resigned and announced her candidature for the 2011 elections, and then she was later voted as the president of the CPP to represent that party in that election. And last but not the least, she has been recognized severally by different organizations. One of them is the World Bank, where she was recognized as one of the 7 influential women in Africa. She was also counted amongst the 150 women who moved Africa by the Newsweek. She holds an MBA from Howard University in Washington, D.C. So over to you, Madam Kah Walla, if you have a word or two to say to our audience before we move on.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. I see that you did your research because you went back quite far and it was very accurate. I just want to say hello to all of those who are viewing us tonight. Our country is in very dire straits. Our country, Cameroon, is in a very difficult position. Our population is suffering greatly, and it is important that all of us as Cameroonians, we are at a stage where we can no longer be observers. We can no longer be people who are only active on the internet. We have to get involved. So my hope today is that our discussion can shed light on the situation, but also give people some ideas on how they can become actively involved.
Thank you very much for that nice summary. Having said that, we're going to move ahead to our very first question on the list today. And it's actually taking us back to 2011 when your party took part in the presidential elections. And you came sit in that election after Chief Justice Ayapol Abeng. But in 2018, your party boycotted the elections. Now, while some Cameroonians applauded that decision, others deemed it irrational and some termed it cowardice and all whatnot. Could you justify that decision for us?
Yes. So we, as you mentioned, personally, I have been 3 times to elections in Cameroon. I was in the 2007 legislative and municipal elections under the SDF banner, and I was elected to the Douala City Council under that election. I went to elections again as a presidential candidate in 2011, and again, we participated in, this time with the Cameroon People's Party, with the CPP, and then we participated again with elections in 2013, the legislative and municipal elections. Those participations led us to believe that the electoral system in Cameroon does not allow for any form of free and fair election. The electoral system in Cameroon is designed to keep Mr. Biya and his party in power. And in our 2014 Congress, therefore, as a party, we made the decision that as long as Mr. Biya is in power, we are no longer going to participate in elections. And that what we should spend our energy, our time, our focus on is to get the Biya regime out of power through a non-violent political transition in the way that the citizens of Tunisia have done, in the way that the citizens of Burkina Faso have done, in the way that the citizens of Algeria have done in taking out a dictator, because we are talking about a dictator, and therefore you cannot talk about elections. So in 2018, we did not participate in that election, and there was a second reason driving us in 2018, which was the Anglophone crisis, which was already full-fledged by that time. And we said, either we are going for elections in Cameroon or we are not. We cannot go for elections in 8 regions of Cameroon, knowing that in 2 regions of Cameroon, it would be impossible to carry out elections. So we felt, our feeling at the time was that the opposition, we should come together and put pressure on the Biya regime to be able to find a solution to the Anglophone crisis, rather than going to elections with him as if there was no problem in the country. So this is why we did not go for elections in 2018.
Great.
And we think that we were very correct. We are very happy with that decision.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Kah Walla. I think that's a very, very reasonable response. And but I do have a follow-up question to especially maybe two follow-up questions. I'll start with the first one. So the first one is, you think the citizens of Cameroon should stand up for Cameroon, I mean, which is one of the movements we do here, to just the same like the people in Tunisia did. But each time this kind of stand up starts, the response from the government is always disproportionate. So how do you think that kind of a movement can succeed?
Yes, I think that one, we should always remember the full history of Cameroon. The times when Cameroonians have been able to get change in this country is the times when they have stood up. We stood up for independence back in the day. We stood up for those who remember in the early 90s. In the early 90s, we did not, Paul Biya did not give us democracy as he likes to tell the story today. Rather, he responded to the demands of Cameroonians who were protesting non-violently in the streets. So we should know that we have stood up before in this country. And we can then ask ourselves, when have we been successful and when have we not been successful in standing up? We have been successful when we have been able to create a national movement. We have been successful when we have been able to get what we call critical mass into the streets. And this is what we must do. In the 90s, you know, today, before you hold an election, before you hold a meeting as a political party, the police has come and so on and so forth. They ban your meeting and so on. By the time you get 200-300 protesters out, they have come with violence and so on. But that is because we are too few. It is a simple question of numbers. In the 90s, we never used to declare our meetings, and our meetings were never banned by police, because by the time they come to a meeting site, they meet 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people there. What are they going to do? Our marches, the police could not, they came as they always do with their violence, but they could not restrict the people because there were so many of us. So we should know that non-violent action has obtained results in Cameroon before, and it has obtained results around the world. Even those countries that who are claiming success today, those are countries where the regime was very violent. Whether you are talking about Tunisia, whether you are talking about Egypt, whether you are talking about Algeria, Burkina, those are all countries where the regimes were very, very violent regimes. In fact, some of them would consider that Biya's regime is not as violent as some of those other ones. But it is a question always of numbers. When you get people out into the streets in their tens of thousands, in their hundreds of thousands, and it is also another key element is where those who are part of the Anglophone movement and who were part of it from 2015, 2016, they will bear witness with me that when we were discussing strategy, I was always one to say, no, don't do this in the Anglophone regions. If we are going to protest, let us go to Yaoundé. Because in the Anglophone regions, you are out of the limelight and you are not bothering the regime. The regime can leave you in ghost town in Manze or in Bamenda for even 2 years, 3 years, as they have done, because it is not a problem for them. They are not feeling it. Biya told us many years ago that quand Yaoundé respire, le Cameroun vit. We should believe him. So he tells us that it is the importance of Yaoundé. So we should believe him and know that if we want to affect him, we must go to Yaoundé with our protests. If you want to get Biya out, it is and nowhere else.
Yeah, great. Thank you very, very much for that response. And I believe the audience are listening and now know how they can impact impact political change in Cameroon. Another follow-up question I have from your first response, not this one, is about you mentioned that bringing the opposition together will be one way that it will be easier to remove President Obia from power. So why is the opposition not coming together?
It is that question. I cannot tell you a lie. It's a difficult one for me. It's a difficult one for me because the only thing I can tell you is that our appreciation of the political situation as parties differs. It's not the same appreciation always. In the opinion of the CPP, we should no longer be participating in Mr. Biya's agenda, whether it is elections, whether it is dialogue today. We should go to things when we have built a rapport de force, as we say, and we know that the power balance enables us to influence the way things are going to be done and what is going to be said. If we do not have that power balance, we are dealing with a dictator. He will tell us who, what, when, where, and how. And it will only be the way that he wants it to be. And that way has never worked for us for the last 37 years. So I think the message that we have to the opposition, we are quite happy today because we now have new dynamics, such as the Citizenship Front, which is now able to carry out activities with 15, 18 organizations working together, Francophone and Anglophone organizations working together. And we have a clear agenda of bringing an end to the Anglophone crisis and political transition for Cameroon. So we are happy to see people beginning to work together. One of my greatest disappointments is that we were not able to get the opposition to come together for this Anglophone crisis. I can tell you personally that my first letter to opposition leaders asking us to come together was in December 2016. 2016, when I told them that our reading, because we had people on the ground, we told them in December 2016 that our reading of the situation on the ground was that if we as the opposition do not get ahead of this crisis, stand and become the spokespersons for the Anglophone crisis, then we risk a crisis that will get out of hand. Unfortunately, I think things were not bad enough. Nobody thought that they would get this bad at that time, and some of the leaders did not heed. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
But I'm happy to see together now.
Yeah. Just before we go to the Anglophone crisis, another question that came up, like someone pointed out when we put up this topic, and they really wanted us to ask you. I didn't want to ask you today, but because you brought the idea of the elections here today, I think it would be appropriate for me to get the question to you. So one of the things I think I've read you have spoken about in the past few years was that it's also a little bit, it's difficult to win an elections with just a first round in Cameroon. So you have advocated for a second round of elections. So is that something you still stand by, and how, what have you been doing in the background to see if this can be implemented?
So as we have said, before we at the CPP, before we took our position of political transition, which is a position of no negotiation with the Biya regime, we simply want them out. Before we took that position, we have tried to negotiate with this regime, and that includes on electoral reform. I started advocating for electoral reform in Cameroon in 2007. 2007, we had an 11-point electoral reform, which are the reforms asked for by all the political actors and civil society actors in Cameroon. So they include things such as a 2-round election. They include things such as a single ballot. They include things such as the right for 18-year-olds to vote. They include things such as the biometric, the full biometric identification, which would allow people to go in, give their biometric details, and come out with a voter's card. So all of these elements of electoral reform we have been working on since 2007, advocating to the government, carrying out non-violent protests. The first time that I protested in Cameroon was for electoral reform, and I was water hosed at the time. I was water hosed and beaten with my colleagues. Yes, so these are some of the actions that we've carried out for electoral reform, and we realize that this regime will never give us those reforms. Mr. Biya's regime will never do it, and that is why today we say what we want is to have them out and let us Cameroonians figure ourselves out. Having them out is not a guarantee that everything will work, but it will give us a chance. What we want is a chance to be able to sit down together, define our key principles as a country, define the foundation of the country, and move forward. We cannot do this with the Biya regime. They have shown us that time and time again.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we'll move to the Anglophone crisis now, to our first question with respect to the dialogue and the Anglophone crisis. And so Elizabeth will have that question for you, since I've been talking a lot.
Okay. I want to apologize for my camera. I don't know what's happening to it, but hopefully we can get moving here. So with respect to the Anglophone crisis, we've heard you heavily criticize the diaspora. You've accused them of lies and deception, called them hypocrites. In your own words, you use those kind of words. And it's a remark that sparked a lot of outrage, especially in the diaspora community. Could you bring more clarity to those remarks? Because maybe some people misconstrued you, or maybe you haven't had the opportunity to clarify some of those things. Can you please do that for us tonight?
Sure. I think it's important also to state that the reaction was to put a price on my head. The reaction was was to give license to kill me in the Anglophone regions. And I say that because to me, this is the kind of problem that I was decrying in my statement. To give full context to that statement, I was at a conference at the George Washington University, and I gave my talk, completed my talk, and the last slide of my talk was a slide where I said, we must dialogue. We must dialogue with the fighters on the ground. We must dialogue with the diaspora leaders. We must dialogue with the leaders for restoration, independence, who are in Kondengi. And a researcher, an American researcher, raised his hand and asked me the question, Madam Walla, you are saying we must dialogue with diaspora leaders. However, I attended the Amazonia conference a few weeks ago. There was a conference in Maryland, if you remember, I think in February or so. He said, I attended that conference, and leaders were openly saying there that there is not enough blood, that more people should be killed, because it is only when more people are killed that the international community will pay attention. So I have to tell you that honestly, in that moment, I lost my temper. I lost my temper because it is inconceivable to me that people who do not live in Cameroon, who are not undergoing what the population is undergoing, should feel that it is okay that we lose more lives. We have lost over 2,000 lives. We have, you gave the statistics in the beginning, 1.3 million people who are in need of urgent assistance.
Yep.
That assistance is not coming, by the way. They are in need of assistance and it is not coming. We have 560,000 displaced persons. We have our young men who have learned how to kill. Do you know what it means for a young man to take a knife and to slit somebody's throat or to chop somebody up into pieces? I often ask people that as you are encouraging violence, as you are encouraging those young men to go out and kill, these young men, for the most part, I am in contact with them. I've met some of them. They are children. They are children. They are between 13 and maximum 23 years old, for the most part. You are teaching them how to kill. These are children who they're not yet married. They don't yet have houses. So I say to those who encourage those children to kill that tomorrow, I hope you are going to give that young man your daughter to marry. Because I would not want somebody who has slit somebody's throat, no matter for what cause, to marry my daughter. So I hope you are going to provide that young man with a woman to marry, since you are encouraging him to go and kill today. I hope you are going to accept for him to be your neighbor. You have to accept for him to be your neighbor because he will have to live somewhere. We should understand the consequences of what we are doing, of teaching our young men that the way to solve a problem is to kill somebody. And as all of you well know, this killing is completely out of hand today.
Yep.
It no longer has a rhyme nor a reason. And as you know, also, I said it then, and I will say it again today. I will stand by what I say, that a lot of this was built on lies. The population was lied to in the beginning by those who said that we are going to Boya, UN is going to support us, UN ships are in Ambas Bay, UN soldiers have been spotted in the Anglophone region, and so on and so forth. I am not saying, let me not be misunderstood, I'm not saying that the population on the ground is not fed up with the BR regime. They are. I am not saying that they would not have come out to stand for their rights. They would, because those rights are being trampled upon. What I am saying is that we gave them a false hope. We told them stories which were not true. And on top of that, the people who told them those stories did not prepare the fallout. We know Mr. Biya. I go out to protest against Mr. Biya. When I go out, I know that I may end up in jail. That is who he is. I know that people who go out to march with me, we take the pains to train them, to inform them, because we know that we may be jailed, we may be beaten, we may even be killed. We know that. That is who we are dealing with. When we go out for protests, we organize people in groups. Each group has a leader. Each leader has all the names of the people who are in his or her group registered, so that in case of a problem, we know who our people are, who is missing, what has happened. These people were sent on the street with no organization whatsoever. And they faced bullets. And believe you me, some of us who were not at all involved in sending them to the street, we were the ones paying hospital bills, we were the ones paying for lawyers to try to go and assist, we were the ones paying for people to have some form of support. So I maintain that we must not, the diaspora must not sit in the diaspora and give orders here without consulting people on the ground. It is another form of dictatorship. We have one dictator who sits in Yaoundé. He does not understand what people are going through on the ground. He takes decisions and carries out action without consultation. We should not have people in the diaspora who say they are fighting for the Anglophone cause behaving in the same manner. This puts our population at risk it disempowers our population.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much, Madam Kah Walla, for that extensive and elaborate response. I think you've clarified your comments on that day, and hopefully the people watching will understand from where you came from to answer that question. However, many in the diaspora have also argued that most of those responses are as a result of what the local media comes with. Like you hear people in Cameroon, like I believe the journalist name is Jacques Zay, who said about deratization, like Anglophones should be treated like rats. And I believe also in Vision Card, people have actively advocated for the killing of Anglophones. So this is like from Newton's third law of motion, which they always say action and reaction, action and reaction are equal and opposite. So this is just a response to what happened in Cameroon, but always they argue that the diasporans are always scapegoat. So why is it? So the question is, why are the diasporans always scapegoat when most of this starts from the ground?
The fact that we have mad people governing us does not give us license to be mad. Mr. Biya, his regime, and those who support him are infested with a form of madness. Do you respond to a mad person with madness? No. So we know this regime. We are not dealing with this regime. We are not dealing with them for the first time. They have been in power for 37 years, and over those 37 years, they have been consistent. So our strategies cannot simply be reactions to what they are doing, because at that rhythm, we get the situation we are in today, which is that those 2,000 people who are dead, they are not from Biya's regime. They are our people. The 560,000 people who are displaced, no minister is displaced, no prefect is displaced, no sous-prefect is displaced, no CPD and boss is displaced. These are our people who are displaced. So we must also assess our strategy. If we stand up for the people, it is the people who must benefit. I do not believe in causes where you have a cause and the people you say you are fighting for, those are the people paying the price of what it is you are fighting for. I say no, I'm sorry. The people who should feel the pinch, they live in Yaoundé. The people who should feel the pain, they are sitting pretty in Yaoundé. So we must assess our strategy. As I've always said, even if we felt that a violent strategy was the right strategy in the beginning, can we say today that Anglophones are better off given the strategy that we have used? We are dealing with an evil regime. We are dealing with a regime that knows no mercy, knows no way of taking care of Cameroonians. And this is true from the north to the south of Cameroon. It is not particular to the Anglophone regions. As you saw, some of what we, as a party, we had been crying about in 2014, when we went to the north and we saw what the army was doing in the north, we raised the alarm to say there are human rights violations going on which are of an order which are not acceptable in a country. At that time, there were very few people to listen to us. I always remind Anglophones that at that time, I didn't see any Anglophone standing up for human rights. But guess what? It is the same tactics that were used in the extreme north, the extrajudicial killings, the burning of villages, the chasing, the mass incarceration of people. That is what this regime took less than 2 years later to the Anglophone regions. So we must, our strategies cannot be strategies of reaction. We are dealing with mad people. We are dealing with people who have no care or concern for their population. So we must have care and concern for that population. We must ask ourselves, when we choose a strategy, is this strategy in the best interest of that population?
Okay.
I have a follow-up question there. So you mentioned earlier that the strategy that the separatists choose at the beginning wasn't, to you, right? Wasn't the right strategy because you know who you're dealing with. Do you think if we had chosen a
Yes.
non-violent strategy, we could have been a better off situation than we are today? And if you know, if we had chosen a better strategy, could the struggle have garnered so much attention that it has garnered up to this point?
It's not just what I believe. I think that we can look around the world today and see. Let us take the case of the Sudanese. The Sudanese rose up in December 2017. They rose up in non-violent action against Bashir. Bashir is more violent than Biya. Bashir, he shot into the population. They came back. There was in one day, he killed more than 100 people. The population came back. Today is out of power, and Sudan is top government. These are people who started after us. They have gotten rid of the dictator, and they are already at the point of negotiating what the future of their country is going to look like. So you look at the examples of Burkina, you look at the examples of Tunisia, etc., you see that populations that go for a non-violent strategy, first of all, as far as you talked about the attention and maybe the international support, what have they said? There is very little international support for a violent movement. People listen to you, but at the end they put up their hands. They cannot get involved because you have decided to take up arms. What we see in non-violent movements, because they are non-violent, internationally they are able to gather a lot of support. They are also able to get support nationally, because do not forget, when Mr. Biya sends soldiers to the northwest and the southwest, they did not go and kill Anglophones. They did not sign up to go and be shooting at people. But they are soldiers, and when you are in an army, you receive an order, you obey the order.
Correct.
But they are children of Cameroonians. So when you cut off the soldier, it is entire which is against you. So sympathetic to your cause, because you are, when you kill, way that we are angry when they kill our own children. It is the way that any soldier, any person who has been killed in this conflict, and especially those who have been mutilated. I can tell you, in Yaoundé, I had a driver who is a guy from Yaoundé. This guy's opposition person you can imagine. He used to drive me, he would explain so many things to me, give me so much information about what is happening within their own communities and so on. This went on until the day soldier from his village had the head cut off. And he said, "Madam, I'm not going to drive." I said, "Why?" He said, "Your brothers have killed my own brother." And as much as I understand the cause, as much as I know we had discussed the cause, this man was very sympathetic to the Anglophones. But the day that somebody killed, he said, "No, with all my sympathy, I can no longer be a part of this." So when you use violence, as justified as that violence may be, it is sometimes justified. The soldiers are doing horrible things, which cannot. But when you use violence, no matter what, when it is your own brother who is killed, even if the reasons for killing him are very reasonable, the pain you feel means that you can no longer identify with that cause. So non-violence has the advantage of not only garnering international support, but also garnering national support.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, I'm going to move on to the question 3 here, which is the main reason for our meeting today. It's mainly about the dialogue. So it's been 3 years since the crisis erupted in the Northwest and the Southwest regions. The consequences, we've already touched on some of those, have been very grave, to the point where schools are completely locked down in some of the towns and villages. There has been a widespread call for national dialogue as a first step to begin addressing this crisis. So on September 10th, President Paul Biya finally delivered the speech calling for separatists to lay down their arms and come up for the dialogue, and laid some conditions. Hello?
Terence, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, all right. I will. Okay, I can bring her back, but I can ask the question she was asking you. Okay, so basically it's about dialogue. So I'll ask her question now. So it's been 3 years since the crisis erupted in the southwest and northwest regions of Cameroon. The consequences, you have highlighted some of them already. There has been the shutdown of schools, a lot of people killed, many displaced, some unaccounted for. There has been widespread dialogue since 2017, call for dialogue since 2017 by both the local and international community. So on September 10, the head of state of the Republic of Cameroon finally delivered a speech and vaguely calling for the laying down of arms. So, and also for a national dialogue. So the question we have here for you is, could you give us your position on this speech by the president in terms of the timing, the content, the outcome? Do you think it will meet your expectations and yield any fruits? I know that's a very, very long question, but I know you also have, like, we know some of your positions already. So I believe the audience will be willing to hear from you.
Yes. So we at the Cameroon in general, we responded to Mr. Biya's call for dialogue, his speech, but by an open letter, because we felt that his call for dialogue did not at all meet our expectations. The first element was about the content. Mr. Biya said we were going to discuss the Anglophone crisis, and at the same time he said we were going to discuss that within the confines of the current constitution, telling us what the conclusion of the dialogue was going to be. Because in Cameroon today, I can say there are 3 different positions. There are those who want separation of the West regions into an Anglophone state. There are those who believe in some form of federalism, and there are many forms of federalism, 4-state, 2-state, 10-state, and so on. But we can group all of those ones together and call them federalists. And then there are those who believe in maintaining the unitary state and having some form of decentralization. Now, Mr. Biya has been unable to deliver on the decentralization which is described in the Cameroonian constitution, which, by the way, very important to note, was the fruit of the 1991 dialogue, because this is not the first time we are going to dialogue with Mr. Biya. And the questions on the table, many people may not realize when we talk about tripartite in 1991, one of the key questions on the table was the Anglophone question. So we must know that the tripartite, there was a political crisis, but at the center of that political crisis was the Anglophone question. So we are almost going to the same dialogue that we went to in 1991, except that Mr. Biya is telling us ahead of time that he is only going to discuss about decentralization as described in the Constitution, because I want to also point out that federalism, decentralization, those are just words. Federalism can mean the United States is a federal country. Germany is a federal country. Nigeria is a federal country. Switzerland is a federal country with very, very different types. Those four countries do not in any way resemble one another when we talk about federalism. So it is important to go beyond those labels and actually understand what people are putting inside when we say federalism. But regardless, Mr. Biya told us in his call to dialogue only with the Constitution. That is number one. Number two is that he also, in his speech, it was very bizarre because he said virtually there is no marginalization of Anglophones. The literal word he used was cette prétendue marginalisation, meaning that it is in our heads that we have conjured up this marginalization. Now, first of all, we find that to be insulting because we cannot have 2,000 people dead, 500,000 people displaced, over 1 million in dire straits, and then you are saying cette prétendue marginalisation. So it means that he has no consideration for the victims of this crisis. So that's number one. But so in terms of the content, we felt there's a problem. I am not a secessionist, I am not a separatist, but I do not believe that we can hold anything called a dialogue without the separatists. They have an opinion, they have a position. That position is significant in Cameroon today. And if we say we are dialoguing, we cannot start a dialogue by eliminating their position. It's not possible. So to me, or to us already, in terms of the content, something was definitely wrong. Two, in terms of participation, this crisis started with the non-violent action led by people like Agbobala, Fontem, Macho BBC, Terence Penn, Galim Felix, Chi Conrad, and the others. The last four, Agbobala has been released, Fontem has been released, but the Macho BBC, Terence Penn, hello, are you still seeing me?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We just put you on the full screen. We can see you. We just put you on a full screen.
I think we are no longer transmitting. Let me wait for a minute.
No.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, because I
just put you on a full screen so that we talk to the people.
Okay, yes. Okay, go ahead then. It's fine. I just want to make sure.
You are the only one on the screen.
Okay. Yeah. So, so as I was saying, Macho BBC, Galim Felix, Chi Conrad, Terence Penn, and hundreds of others, because the arrest in early 2017 was over 1,000 people. Many of them are still in jail. What dialogue are we talking about without releasing these people? Even if I want to separate, because the separatist leaders is another question. Mr. Biya can claim that, oh, they took up arms, they're this, that, and the other. We can have a separate conversation about them. But why are those who carried out non-violent protests still in jail. And who are we dialoguing with if they are not sitting at that dialogue table? That is number one. Number two, as I've said, is the separatists. How do we dialogue without the separatists when they are at the center of the crisis? So there too, the separatist leaders are in jail. I have visited Sisiku Ayub Tabe several times, and he is completely open to dialogue. He is completely open to dialogue. So why should Mr. Biya be carrying out a dialogue in Palais de Congrès, in Palais de Congrès, and not bringing in people who are sitting in Kondengi just a few kilometers away? And the other thing was that the invitation sent to the separatists in the diaspora, I'm sorry, if I was in their position, I would not come either, because you cannot have actions where you have police action against somebody, you have an action to arrest somebody, and then you invite him to come in without mentioning that action you have already taken against him, without telling him, oh, I guarantee your safety, I guarantee your immunity, by him to be able to attend the dialogue. So we felt this was unserious. The CRM militants, the militants of Mr. Kamto's party, this is one of the major political parties in the country. The president of that party is in jail, along with close to 100 of his party members. How do you say you are holding a national dialogue without one of the main political parties in the country? So in terms of participation, we said, no, this is not okay for us. The third and the other thing is that all of this is being done unilaterally by Mr. Biya. We have been asking him for dialogue for 3 years. He gets up one fine morning for reasons which are completely unbeknownst to us and decides that the dialogue will take place before the end of the month of September. He does not check with anybody about their calendar. It is as if we were all sitting waiting for Mr. Biya to call us, and now we must start working like robots to go in the direction he has told us to go. He does not consult with us. We have put out ideas about this dialogue. He consults with nobody. He does not talk to us about who will be able to participate. We are seeing participants at the dialogue. If I tell you, I am completely perplexed by the participants I see at the dialogue. First of all, there are more Francophones than Anglophones. I know that the Prime Minister has reassured us that it will be 70% Anglophone and 30%, but where is he going to keep those delegations who have already arrived here? Is he saying, and where are the Anglophones going to come from? Because we have not seen them. So the participation is completely off. And if I go to the third point, which is the guarantee that decisions taken will be implemented.
Yeah.
If we are here today, in this crisis today, it is because the decisions taken in 1991 were not respected. Had Mr. Biya done even the little bit of decentralization that he was supposed to do since 1996, we would not be talking of an Anglophone crisis today. Had he respected the term limits, because we must remember that in that 1996 constitution agreed upon in the tripartite were term limits, Mr. Biya would not have been our president today. So how does somebody invite you for a first dialogue, agree on things which he does not implement? He gives you no explanation. He gives you no reason. And then now today he's calling you for a second dialogue without changing anything in the way that he has behaved in the past. So for that reason, despite the fact that the Cameroon People's Party has been invited, we are not attending the dialogue. We do not believe that this dialogue is going to produce any result, any workable result. We do not see, I want to go to this last point. I was one of the people who left Douala and went to Bamenda on the 9th of December. The first children in this crisis were killed by the army, were shot at by the army on the 8th of December. On the 9th of December, by 11 o'clock, I was in Bamenda. I held in my arms the woman whose son had been shot. And that woman asked me what I was doing in her house. She asked me, why are you here? Why are you here? What has happened that has caused you to be here? And I did not have a response for that woman. I held in my hand, my arms in March when I went to Batibo, a woman who had to bury her son on the same spot, because when the army came to their village, they ran. And when they ran, they scattered, and she did not know that her son had been killed. So when she came back days later, the body was so rotten that they had to dig the grave and lower the body right on the same spot because they could not carry that body. That woman's voice, she could not speak. She could not talk because her pain was so much. The question I have for Mr. Biya is, where are these women? What are you dialoguing about without these women, without that population? I have seen those delegations. I have not seen who there is going to talk for these women who have been burying their children. Who is going to talk for the populations whose villages have been burnt? I don't see anybody on those lists who is talking for those people. So I am not going to a masquerade. I am not going to a party. I understand they are there distributing per diems. I'm sure tomorrow we will see them eating and feeling fine. I am not going to be a part of that. I'm very sorry. If I felt that there was even one small chance, if I saw in the setup to this dialogue, even one small chance of something which would help the population of the Northwest and Southwest, I would go. I would be in Yaoundé. But I am not going to participate in a masquerade. Today alone, I've received over 10 calls from Yaoundé of people within the regime who want me to come. And my question to them is, what have you set up? How have you set it up so that we get solutions for the people? And none of them has been able to provide me with a response. So our position is that we are not participating. Mr. Biya asked us to participate in 1991. The conditions were not right. We said we are going to give it a chance. But 28 years later, with the same Mr. Biya, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to give him any more chances. The chances are over.
Wow.
Wow, that's deep.
You actually answered our next question.
Yeah.
Which was going to be whether you would or you wouldn't take part in the dialogue. So, you covered that extensively and explicitly gave your reasons. And
if I can just ask her just one follow-up question,
yeah.
And this is with respect to timing of this dialogue. I mean, it's been 3 years that this crisis has been ongoing. And like you said, we've lost a lot of lives. The economy is crumbling. Schools are locked down. And, do you think the dialogue, number one, came a little bit too late? And number two, like many people are saying, or, there's a lot of controversial comments going on social media, that the main reason why the president came up with this idea of a dialogue at this time was just to pamper the international community, with respect to the upcoming UN General Assembly.
Of last week. Yeah.
Do you have any inkling? Do you think that has anything to do at all?
I believe so, because the pressure for him to have a dialogue now, right now, immediately, it certainly didn't come from within Cameroon. We have been clamoring for this dialogue for over 3 years. So I was actually in New York. I only arrived in Cameroon yesterday because I was in New York last week. I met with the Cameroon team at the Secretary General's office, and I think that Mr. Bia, and that is why I don't want to participate in my masquerade, because he has succeeded to some extent, because the team was able to tell me, oh, you know, at least we've been asking for dialogue, he has given dialogue. And it was only when I had the same type of conversation with them that I'm having with you, that I started pointing out the details on the participation, on the content, on the lack of guarantee for decisions. How do we make the decisions binding? That I seem to see them be taken aback a little bit. You know, the thing with the international community, I always tell Cameroonians, no foreigner is coming to solve your problem more than you yourself. So we can count on the international community, but they are not going to provide the in-depth solutions that we need to our own problem. Mr. Bia needed for his team to, at the UN General Assembly, to give the impression that they were solving the problem, to be able to respond to anybody who asked them that no dialogue is coming on. And yes, I believe that is why he did it. However, the rest of us are not sleeping. We are also advocating in those same institutions. I am very pleased to say that you know, I was in New York. I was able to meet with the Secretary General's office. I was able to have a nice roundtable with over 8 of the international NGOs who are working in Cameroon. And very fantastically, I had a dinner with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. I was able to sit with her. I was lucky. I sat right beside her and I filled her ears with Cameroon for the entire evening. And we were able, I think that going to New York was worth. It was a very difficult trip for me between 2 professional engagements, but it was worth the while, because I realized that when we don't provide people with the detailed analysis, when we don't allow them to actually see what is happening, then Mr. Bia gets away with some of these things. But when we are able to have those face-to-face discussions with these organizations, then we are able to put the details, to give them the details of actually what is happening here on the ground. So I think that he may feel that he has gotten away with it, but I think that we are also able, both myself and I know other organizations are also doing this. We are able to provide further information to the international stakeholders on Cameroon.
Great. Thank you very, very much for that response and for all your efforts to bring a lasting solution to the current crisis. And hopefully the people in Cameroon will one day become happy with you and others' efforts. We very much appreciate all your efforts that you have been doing in the background.
Thank
if you didn't
you.
help, you wouldn't have known that. So I will go to the next question, which is something on your platform. I believe that's what you stand with, and it's what your party also stands with. So you posted on the website on the Facebook page of the CPP party some of the items that will be useful for a good dialogue, and I've put them there for on the screen for the audience to see. Some of the issues, some of the elements you recommended or your party proposed and recommended for a great dialogue include solving problems of our colonial past,
Yes.
redefining relationship between citizens and the state, redefining the relationship and the nature of the form of the state, reformation of the key institutions as well as the army and military, and the enforcement agency. So those are some of the issues. I'll put them there on the screen for the audience to see. These elements you have raised are in complete parallel or contrast with what I found on the website of the National Dialogue, again, which is, they have a series of commissions, including one for bilingualism and cultural diversity, which I believe we already had a commission in 2017, one for the educational system, one for the judicial system, one for decentralization, which you already touched, that it was as a result of the tripartite of 1991 that resulted in the constitutional changes of 1996. And then a couple of other issues, disarmament and demobilization. We think Mr. Fayengo, the former governor, was appointed to head that commission already. So we don't know why it's here, as well as the role of the diaspora in the crisis. So why do you think these parallels exist?
It's very simple. Our government is unserious. We unfortunately are run by a government which does not take its job seriously. You know, I think we should not divorce the management of the Anglophone crisis from the management of this government in general. This is a government which 60 years after independence is unable to deliver drinking water to its population. And I am not talking about a population in Meganga or in Donga Mantum, or in Yaoundé and Douala, citizens do not have water to drink. It is a government unable to deliver electricity, to deliver roads. So this is a government that manages simple problems, because providing water, providing electricity, roads, these are the most basic functions of a government. It is unable to deliver those simple solutions. So when you get to a problem as complex as the Anglophone crisis, the Anglophone problem, you cannot expect people who are unable to deliver on simple questions to deliver on complex ones. So what we are seeing in the National Dialogue website, I am also subscribed to the website, so I watch it very carefully. It's ridiculous. You see from there, you know, earlier I said that the separatists must question their strategy, but it is not only the separatists. More importantly, even, was for the government to question its strategy, because you cannot be a government responsible for human beings. And I do not put the government and the separatists on the same page, because I don't pay taxes to the separatists. I've never given them any resources. I pay taxes to the government of Cameroon, and they have the resources to resolve my problems. So how do you, as a government, your people are dying, they are being displaced, your economy is in shambles, your children are out of school, but when you have this opportunity called a dialogue, you take your old soup, and you are trying to reheat it. The soup has gone sour. The soup has gone sour, really badly sour, and you want to reheat it for us. So you are still talking about Commission on Bilingualism and cultural diversity. That alone, I am telling you, gave me a headache. Just that one commission alone gave me a headache. Not to talk of disarmament and so on. The government of Cameroon is behaving as if there are not norms to what we are doing. Cameroon is not the first country to have a conflict. It will not be the last. And the norms in conflict management, I work in other countries. I work in Congo. I work in Burundi. I work in countries that are under conflict. I told you I'm just arriving in Douala last night. I was coming from Berlin. I was conducting a workshop there with 16 countries on civic participation, how to get citizens to be active. There are norms to all of this. The government is not respecting even one of those norms. You cannot, if you want to bring a conflict to an end, the parties, the active stakeholders to the conflict must be at the table. If you want to negotiate a ceasefire, the people who are shooting must be able to talk to one another. They do so with a neutral facilitator. The government has called a dialogue. The government is party to the conflict. It is even the biggest protagonist and the one that has caused the most violence in the conflict, and they are going to be the ones sitting to mediate the discussion. How does it work? You see on those commissions disarmament. Disarmament is a process. You dialogue with the protagonist, you get to an agreement with the protagonist as to the end of the conflict, and then you disarm.
And just to add, I always thought you first ceasefire before you disarm, but I didn't know the president has to ceasefire.
Absolutely, that is part of the negotiated settlement. You sit down, you dialogue, you negotiate, amongst which you negotiate ceasefire, you negotiate repatriation, you negotiate amnesty, you negotiate so many things, and then you disarm. When the government of Cameroon is disarming, it says it has a disarmament committee. My question to them is, how many separatist fighters are there? Do they know? Because you can only disarm, you can only have a program for disarmament when you know that there are this number of fighters. We are projecting to disarm this number by this date, then this number by this other date, and so on and so forth. They are now unilaterally disarming on other people's fighters. How do they know? It is, I think I've also received a lot of calls from ordinary Cameroonians telling me, no, you should go to the dialogue, we really need you there, and so on. But the fact is that this government is ridiculous because we have accepted for it to be ridiculous. We have played along with them. They are the most mediocre of mediocre because they continue to lead us down paths which make no sense at all. And we continue to say, oh, no, let's just go. Where are we going to? I do not understand. I am sure there will be several thousand people in Yaoundé tomorrow. And the only question I have for those people is, what are you doing here? What is the path? Where are you going to? What is the solution that you are here to obtain? And have you constructed the path? Have the conditions been laid out to obtain such a solution? So really, it is very discouraging. Let me tell you another thing. I mentioned it earlier. Amongst those commissions, there is no commission on rehabilitation. These young children that we have pushed to the bush, in whose arms we have pushed guns. There is no commission that is actually using, once again, the norms, the international norms we know of. These children are psychologically harmed. They need rehabilitation to get back into society. They need to be able to have jobs, to be able to do things which will be able to compensate, because once somebody has a gun in their hands, they have power.
Yep.
And to get them to release that power, you need to substitute it with something else. You don't see any of those essential questions being addressed. Where is the commission for victims? Where is the commission that will tell us, the women I told you about? I gave you examples of 2 women whose children had been killed. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of women like that in the Northwest and Southwest.
Actually, I have a follow-up question with respect to those women. Yeah, we understand that in the last few weeks, several consultative talks have been held with the Prime Minister, with the different regions sending different delegations. And yesterday, you tweeted this when the governor of the Northwest region was speaking on behalf of the consultative team from the Northwest region. And today, maybe you may have seen that the governor of the Southwest region as well was speaking on behalf of the people of the Southwest region. So you just mentioned that these women or some of the people from this region have not been consulted, but I thought the governor was speaking on their behalf.
No, they don't have mouths. No, these people don't need, these governors are some of, they are, I don't even know what adjective to use to describe them. They have been protagonists in this conflict. They are responsible for the aggravation of the conflict in so many instances. Which population are they speaking for? Who are they speaking for? And that tweet, I tell you, of all the things which have happened since Mr. Biya made his declaration, the video of these governors, it is the most personally offensive thing that I have seen. We cannot be talking about an Anglophone crisis. We cannot have lost lives because people feel marginalized, and they feel marginalized because of their Anglophone culture. And then when we say we go to dialogue, we have Anglophone person standing behind a governor who is speaking in French. I tell you, I found it so personally offensive. So personally offensive. And I don't understand the Anglophone chiefs, the Anglophone so-called elites or whatever who were standing behind that governor, talking in French in their name. Then it means the level of confusion is such that we don't even know what it is that we are saying we are going to dialogue about. How is it possible? And mind you, both of those governors speak English. The very least that they could have done, if I do not believe it was their place to speak in the name of those of that population. If people had been consulted, if the women I'm talking to you about had been consulted, I've been to the regions, I've had meeting upon meeting with the population. There are ordinary Anglophones who can articulate what this population is feeling. Even if I were there, I would not speak in their name. They are capable of speaking in their own name, and they are capable of articulating what they are feeling, what they are thinking, and what they want as a solution. It is offensive. It is absolutely offensive for any governor to be talking in their name and to be speaking in French.
Wow. Thank you. Let's move on to the issue of compensation. I know the prime reason for this dialogue is to, try to get us out of this impasse. And as we speak, we have people that have been displaced from their homes. Some of them have completely lost their homes through, other kinds of illegal activities committed both by the army and the separatists as well. So one of the big things that are on the table right now, or that is of concern to many humanitarians, is the issue of compensation. Where do these people go, once all is said and done? If
Yes.
we, yes, if we return to normalcy, everything is nice and happy. The people in Nigeria, the people in those that are still struggling to go across the borders through Mexico to make it to Cameroon and all of that. Should compensation be discussed? Should it be one of the big things on the table for this dialogue?
Absolutely. And when we say that we are completely unconvinced about the content of the discussion on the dialogue, it is because in once again, this is standard. It's not people wishing this or thinking this. Conflict management, the end of armed conflict, is something which has been standardized in international practice. And the question of the how you rehabilitate victims, how do victims, how are they able to get some form of compensation? I don't even like the word, because I don't see how you're going to compensate somebody for their child who has died. But how do you give them the resources that enable them to get back to a normal life? That encompasses a number of things. One, of course, there has been material destruction. People's homes have been burnt and so on. Government has to tell them how they are rebuilding. those homes. Two, there has been a lot of psychological damage. Cameroon today, the state of Cameroon does not have up to 10 psychiatrists on its payroll. We cannot handle, as a country, we cannot handle the psychological trauma that has taken place in those regions. So one of the key elements of discussion, and where we would be asking for help from other countries, is to be able to deal with the psychological trauma, because people have witnessed killing, people have killed, people have had their family members killed, but that is just a bit. There has been so much rape, there has been so much torture in those regions. Kidnapping, do you know what it means to be kidnapped? People, thousands of people have been kidnapped, and we are expecting them to function like normal human beings. So that, all of that element of how do we get this population back to any level of normalcy? And then, as you have said, compensation. Because when the state has incurred damage to a private citizen, the state must compensate. One of the troubling things that we mentioned in our open letter to Mr. Biya, that was that he acknowledged the violence of the armed separatist groups, but he did not, even for 1 second, acknowledge the violence of the army. This for us was very troubling, because the documentation of the atrocities, the armed groups have committed atrocities, there's no question about it. But the army has committed much more significant atrocities on a greater numbers of people. And Mr. Biya did not mention this at all. And we don't see it on the agenda. Now, if we are not ready to acknowledge that the army did things which were not in the interest of the protection of the people, but which harmed the people. And once again, my words should not be taken out of context. I'm not blaming the army, because an army is simply a tool for the person who is governing. No army gets up by itself and decides to go somewhere. No army decides the level of violence to use. If it oversteps that level of violence, it is the job of the person who is governing to say, no, I did not want you to go that far, pull it back, and it is this. So the responsibility is squarely with Mr. Biya. He is the head of the army according to the Constitution of Cameroon. So, but the army that he sent has committed atrocities, and he has not ever pronounced himself to say this army went further than what I asked it to do. They went beyond my orders, and therefore he has to take responsibility for what they have done. And he did not mention them in that speech. So if we are going to a dialogue where the atrocities committed by the army will not be acknowledged, then we have a serious problem, because if we don't acknowledge them, we cannot get to the situations of rehabilitation, of enabling that, of reconciliation even. Because for me to reconcile with you, you must acknowledge that you did something wrong to me. So we cannot get to reconciliation, we cannot get to rehabilitation, we cannot get to healing for this population if we do not acknowledge what has happened from the beginning.
Okay, great. Thank you very, very much. So, I think Elizabeth has the next question to ask you on some of the preconditions. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah, the international community is actually recommending that this dialogue take place without any preconditions. And this is something that has not been welcomed by the separatists because they have been very firm on their demands. They want outright independence and the release of their leaders and all whatnot. So what do you think about this recommendation by the international community with respect to preconditions?
I think the international committee's recommendation of no preconditions has not been well understood, because I do believe what they mean is that what is precisely happening now should not happen. Because Mr. Biya said we will discuss within the constitutional framework. That is a precondition. So he is setting. So when the international community says without preconditions, I believe what they mean is that people should come to the dialogue table, whatever their opinion or idea may be, and should be free to express that opinion. It is I think, unfortunately, I often tell people who don't live in dictatorship that when they want to make pronouncement, they should consult those of us who live in dictatorship, because they don't understand some of what we go through. Because I think it did not occur to them. It did not occur to them that Mr. Biya would call a dialogue without an independent facilitator, for example. I think it did not occur to them that Mr. Biya would call a dialogue without the main people concerned, the populations of the Northwest and Southwest, being adequately represented. So when they were talking about preconditions, it was actually a phrase addressing themselves to government to say, don't create any limits for those who want to participate. This statement is now working against us. I in my communication in New York with the UN team, I was very firm to tell them that in this moment, with regard to this dialogue, they have not helped us. In fact, they have done us harm, because by congratulating immediately Mr. Biya on the fact that he had called a dialogue without precisely setting preconditions for a normative dialogue, for a dialogue that corresponds to internationally accepted norms, they put us in a very difficult position. One of the people who called me today said, well, the UN has congratulated us, so who are you, Kah Walla, to say that the dialogue is not a good one? So, but people who live in normal societies, they sometimes don't understand what a dictatorship is about and to what lengths a dictator can go just to get his own way. Mr. Biya is not looking for a solution to the Anglophone crisis. He's looking to get his own way. That means he's looking to buy himself a little bit more time on what he has turned into a throne. It was a presidential seat. He has turned it into a throne. He's sitting on the throne. He is dictating to us when, where, how. All of us should just march according to what he wants. And all he wants to do is buy himself a bit more time with the international community. It is unfortunate.
Great. So we are almost running to the end of the show. Very much appreciate your efforts despite your travel and your scheduling, that you took time to sit here with us and speak to the Cameroonian people as well as the Cameroonians in the diaspora. So one other question I have for you before maybe we round up is about the issue of moderation. Who moderates the dialogue? You had already mentioned that in passing in one of your responses, and so the separatists, as well as even the people in the middle, whoever stands anywhere apart from the government, believe there should be a neutral body to moderate this kind of a dialogue if it has to go on piecemeal. So one of the questions I have for you, as well as for the separatists, is what you think would be the implications. You have already mentioned that you and your party will be boycotting. A lot of people a lot of separatists we've read through their Facebook feeds are also saying they are boycotting. They wouldn't go to such a dialogue without a neutral body. And they gave examples of late President Nelson Mandela of South Africa mediating between Mobutu Sese Seko and Laurent Kabila, Obasanjo mediating in Liberia. So what do you think would be the implications of boycotting such a dialogue? It seems as if like those boycotting, like some people say, like they don't want a solution.
Not at all. Not at all. On the contrary, we, I think, are the most preoccupied with a solution. And that is why we will not waste time, nor will we give legitimacy to a process which is completely illegitimate. We are not going to give legitimacy to that. So, you know, the consequences of boycotting, I think that what we are going to see in Yaoundé is a big show. It can only be a big show. The key people who could have made it into a veritable solution are not present. So we are just going to see a big show put on for us. So I don't think there are going to be huge consequences. I hope if the government were to come out of there, the best solution I feel that could come out of the Yaoundé discussions this week is for them to agree that this was a preliminary and that real discussions still have to take place. If they were able to end the dialogue by saying that it is actually just a first step and that they will now take into account what everybody has said and actually organize dialogue, then I would consider it to be success. So, and once again, we are ready at any time when there is an actual process and veritable solutions which are put on the table, we are going to be a part of that. But we are not going to be part of a masquerade. We are not going to give legitimacy to something which has none.
Okay. Wow, awesome. It's been very informative, very educational. So if you have any last word for us before we round up for tonight?
Yes, I do. I want to really say to Cameroonians that the country is in a very desperate situation. Our people are dying. Since Mr. Biya called for the dialogue on the 10th of September, the Palace of Bafut has been attacked. There have been several killings. We are still seeing soldiers and acting brutally and violently towards the population, which means that we must act. We cannot lay back. We, at the level of the Cameroon People's Party and at the level of Stand Up for Cameroon, we are spending this week dialoguing. So we are not just sitting. We are spending this week talking with the people on the ground, talking with the population, and refining our strategies. I want to call out to Cameroonians in general, but I want to call out to the women in particular. We have a group as part of Stand Up for Cameroon, which is called Mothers of the Nation. And the Mothers of the Nation, we already had our plan of action and we are continuing with our plan of action, which is massive non-violent action by Cameroonian women. You know, in our African societies, it is when the situation has no other solution that the women come out. So it is time for us as women, Anglophone women, Francophone women, women from the north, women from the south, to join hands together and to come out forcefully to say this situation must end. So for those who are willing to join us to act, acting means we are training women, we are preparing them for non-violent action. We are putting together the logistics so that women can come out in their numbers. We require financing, we require equipment, We require those online for the protection of the women and for the communication. Please join us. Do not go to sleep waiting for dialogue. Don't waste this week saying that, oh, we are waiting to see what is going to come out of the dialogue and so on and so forth. Let us be active. Let us know. Let us not get off track. Mr. Biya always knows how to take us off track. Let us remain focused on the objective of bringing this conflict to a stop and getting to political transition for Cameroon. Mr. Biya and his government have to go, and we as Cameroonian citizens have a role to play, and young women very, very strong role to play. So we are inviting you to contact us. We are all over social media. You can contact us on our Facebook page, Cameroon People's Party, Stand Up for Cameroon, all have Facebook pages. Myself, Kah Walla, I have a Facebook page. You can contact us on our Twitter accounts. You can contact us by email. Get in contact with us if you want to be active. If you believe that we should not stay back, leave things in the hand of Mr. Biya, but rather take our future into our own hands and take the example from the Burkinabe, take the example from the Tunisians, take the example from the Sudanese, and take our destiny into our own hands to come up with political transition. If that is your belief, please get in touch. Don't stay back. Don't be discouraged and don't be distracted. We are determined to save our country and we are going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Madam Kah Walla. This was a very, very fantastic show. We very much appreciate all your efforts to make sure you join the show despite your very, very busy schedule. We hope that the Cameroonians, both at home and abroad, were able to get your message. You've clarified a lot of issues that people really wanted to hear from you. Thank you so, so much. We would like to extend an invitation for the future, maybe for you to talk about your movement, which is the Action for Cameroon, but we'll let you know when time comes. So thank you so much, and thank you, Elizabeth. You did a very fantastic job coming today. So good evening, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much.